everybody, welcome to That Funny Podcast. I'm here with Marla Schultz, comedian. She'll be a part of Laugh My Pancreas Off. Marla, thanks for joining.
Hi, Matt. Well, thank you for having me.
Great having you. So let's tell me more about your background in comedy. You have a unique sort of style, more of a mental health advocacy approach. You're, very positive. Not all comedians are positive these days. Maybe tell us about your background a little bit.
Well, comedy was just a big part of my family life. My dad was absolutely hilarious, had an encyclopedic memory for jokes, and he would be canceled today if he would tell any of his jokes, just like Don Rickles.
Oh, wow. Classics.
Yeah, and also comedy was a way of bonding. My dad, was quick to anger, and the best way to diffuse that was making him laugh. And I found that particular skill just helped me through life. It would ward off bullies, and I just, laughter was just a huge, huge part of my family life growing up. I dealt with bullies that way. And to me, laughter is love, is really what it boils down to.
In what ways have you personally experienced that? You said laughter has sort of served as a way of overcoming adversity.
Well, you mentioned, you were asking me about the mental health stuff. I think because I've suffered 3 pretty major depressions, and I've gone through a tremendous amount of pain and grief. I survived I would say, attempted murder. And being able to laugh at the pain just had a way of diffusing it and, taking your power back. When I first started talking on stage about having anxiety and depression, and when an audience member came up to me afterwards and said, "Thank you so much, I don't feel so alone," that really just empowered me to kind of break through my personal stigma of feeling that, something was wrong with me, and being able to laugh about it and connecting to the audience. I just found such a power in it. And it just, I'm repeating myself, but it just was so powerful in overcoming any kind of adversity.
What about tell me? Let's walk back a little bit in time. What about those early days? Because I've done some stand up myself, and when you start, those are some. If you're going through stuff, and then on top of that, those early days, you're learning how to get funny. That's an interesting. Unless you were just funny out of the gate, I don't know.
You know what? I think I definitely was funny. I was like that crazy nutty kid in the neighborhood. I was like the only Jewish kid on this Catholic cul-de-sac, and I bonded because I was very aware of what was going on in the world. And I always say that I see life through a Rubik's Cube lens. So the way I would process things, it was always funny. And I kind of related to all of my friends' parents, which was odd for like a 6, 7, and 8-year-old. But when I first started comedy, the anxiety was overcoming, and it was just overwhelming, actually. And I took classes. I worked with Stephen Rosenfield, and I started with Gaffigan and the late, great Craig Giraldo. And there was a lot of other people, and it was like getting your legs was so anxiety filled. I would sit in the bathroom and I would just be like, "Mama, mama." I mean, I looked like Rain Man. And I'd had 5 minutes written on my hand with all the buzzwords. And I don't know if you would do that. You would just look at it, and I would get to the club and just the anxiety of wanting to perform. And actually, when I worked with Stephen, we would sit down and review the tapes, and he would say, do you hear the laughter? And it took me actually 2 years to be able to hear the laughter from the audience. And I don't know if that was your experience, but it took a long time to actually feel integrated.
It's funny you say that, because you're right. I remember the very first set I ever had. I was at Acme Comedy Club in Minneapolis, literally just quivering, just holding the mic. And then over time, you sort of get this groundedness and this comfort. And then you kind of have gone through some good sets and bad sets. Now you're at a point where you just don't care. It's like more awkward for the audience in some ways. They're hoping you succeed. And then that's when you can really play and you can have fun and you can explore and then get those really big laughs because you're not needing it so much. You're just relaxed up there. Do you feel like that kind of happens for you, or
Oh,
or do you
yeah.
still get a little bit of that nerves even now?
No,
30 years in.
absolutely. And I know Joy Behar and Susie Essman, and Susie Essman, who I love and admire. She was really like an early mentor to me. And both she and Joy said that it takes about 10 years to become a really good stand-up comic. And they described it as, peeling away the layers of an onion. And Susie was a big advocate of having therapy and in conjunction with pursuing a stand-up career because, as you're peeling away the layers, stuff is going to come up and it's good to be able to process it, not on stage, because who wants to hear a comic vomiting their crap? So it was, so I did that. I'm still in therapy. Um, and I felt like it took a long time to be able to, spitball with the audience, be able to, just be kind of
But I
free.
love your style. I love the natural, very personable approach. You talk about your family life. You talk about very very relatable topics. Uh, let's jump in a little bit into Laugh My Pancreas Off. What intrigued you about this, and what does it mean to you? We're trying to bring some awareness to cancer and pancreatic cancer specifically, and trying to thread that needle where we shine that comedic lens, but also highlight an important issue for people.
Well, I have done two pretty major dances with pancreatic cancer, and it's a cause that I am very, very passionate about because it's really affected me. First time was 2012. My best friend, brother from another mother, Sam Brown, also a hilarious comic, and I was Elaine to his Jerry Seinfeld. He was diagnosed in 2012, and it took him out in 3 months, and it was
Wow.
absolutely, it just rocked my world because the thought of not having him as my North Star was inconceivable. And, nobody really heard of pancreatic cancer. So he unfortunately passed from it in 3 months. And fast forward, uh, like 5 years, it's 2017, and my mother calls me. I was in LA coming, and I was flying back to New York because I had moved. I lived in LA for 10 years and I moved back, and I
Okay.
was going back and forth because Sam asked me to be the godmother of his kids. And I made a, solemn promise that I would always say in their lives. So I'm in LAX returning the car. My mother calls me and says, "When are you coming home?" And I said, I'm at LAX. And I said, "Why?" She goes, "Well, I'm having a little surgery." I go, "What do you mean having a little surgery?" She's like, "Yeah, I have a adeno something or other.
Mhm.
It's pancreatic cancer." And it flipped me out,
Wow.
and I almost crashed into, the barrier, and I fall out of the car, and I'm hysterical crying. And the, budget car rental guy was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "My mother had pancreatic cancer." And I said to her, "Let me be in charge of your healthcare." And, she paused and she said, "Yes." And from that moment, I did a deep dive into pancreatic cancer. And, just as a side note, I was a black sheep of my family.
Right.
Everybody has advanced degrees. I mean, except, a few don't. And because I dropped out of two colleges in 1 week because I like to do a lot of things kind of, big
You're
and
exploring. Yes,
yes,
that's good.
dramatic. And when my mother said yes, it just gave me so much confidence. And through the journey, I was doing a show at Greg Garrett's Comedy Club, and the booker, Elaine, who's no longer there, I told her what happened. She put me in touch with Pamela Marquardt, and who founded PanCan. And we just bonded. We were on the phone for like 2 hours. She was driving from LA to uh, San Diego. And she put me in touch with PanCan, and she fell in love with my mother, who had it for 4.5 years. And I did everything I could to keep my mother alive with the help of PanCan. So anytime that I'm asked to do anything to promote pancreatic cancer awareness, I am there 100%.
For people not familiar, what is PanCan? That's Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, right?
Yes, and it's pancan.org, and they have done so much to not only raise funds for research. There's patient serve. What is it called? Um, look, my anxiety, because I'm so, pancreatic cancer just,
Yeah.
anybody that gets it, it's like a gut punch. And my uncle was, recently diagnosed with it. Patient services. And what they really advocate is that pancreatic cancer doesn't have to be a death sentence, because there's support services for the patient, the patient advocates, family members, questions to ask, because when you hear you're diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, you think it's over and done with, but there's
Yeah.
survivors. And because of the advocacy work of PanCan, the survival rate has increased. They've also raised a tremendous amount of money for research, and it's an amazing, amazing organization, and it's there to help people and family members who are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, I had a father who passed away too from pancreatic cancer. Just it was about a year, but your friend within 3 months. That's stunning. It really is a cancer. It's so uneven in how quickly it can take someone. But you're right. There are resources for people to potentially survive it, and then obviously we're trying to find research and ways to prevent it as much as possible.
And I'm sorry for your loss, because
Okay. Yeah.
it's a real devastating disease. And because of the advocacy work of PanCan, doctors are now, I think, more in tune or more aware of like signs to look for. My mom was, blonde, blue-eyed, and it looks like I was adopted, but she turned tan and her pee was, it was yellow or
Yeah.
orange. And those were two warning signs. And fortunately, her general practitioner recognized the signs, got her a endoscopy, and they were able to, diagnose it pretty quickly. But my mother was a fighter, and she, followed the protocol. And because of PanCan, I had questions to ask, and I stepped in as a, patient advocate. I was my mother's advocate, which is so critical for anybody that is diagnosed with, one of these life threatening diseases, because I can't imagine the mindset when you're getting, when you receive a diagnosis like that, and having somebody be able to shepherd and take the onus off of questions and dealing with the disgusting insurance companies,
Tommy.
you know.
So did you have you're a funny person, you're a comedian, you have that gift. Were you able to kind of give that to your mom as she was, coping with pancreatic cancer? Was that some like a part of the treatment, almost being funny?
Well, my mother, my father was always thought of as the comic,
Mm,
but my mother was the storyteller, and her positive attitude was incredible. And people just fell in love with her because she was funny and she just stayed so positive. And I really think that was part of what kept her alive for so long. And also, my skills as a comic helped me deal and talk to the doctors, because, when you're writing jokes, it's set up, punch, and you just have to cut out all the extraneous fat. And when you're dealing with doctors who, for the most part, are kind of spectrumy, it's just like, give me the facts, facts, facts. And it helped me, to talk to the doctor, communicate with the doctor, sending emails. And I never would insert what I thought. Well, what do you mean? Well, I think blah, blah, blah. It was, give me the facts, just the facts.
becomes very clinical. Yeah.
Like making someone laugh was able for me to get past the gatekeepers, the Manchurian
Right.
candidates, with Medicare, because you're dealing with government agencies, and be able to like bounce me up to a supervisor. There was an instance where my mother's chemo was covered, but the port in which it wasn't, and how to receive the chemo wasn't covered. And I remember getting someone on the phone, and I said, well, how is she supposed to get her chemo? Like, an enema, a sippy cup.
Right.
And because I was able to make her laugh, maybe that wasn't the only reason, but she bounced me up to a supervisor who was devastated and really took up my mother's cause.
Well, it's funny too, because you're right. Like in a sense, we're all human beings in all of this, and I think one of the powers of comedy, and it sounds like you've been able to use this, is just to cut through bureaucracies and labels and stress, and just when we laugh, we're just connecting for a moment in time, And sometimes we bounce out of our roles and we remember, oh yeah, we are just both people going through this crazy thing called life.
Well, I say, I was working in Tennessee in Nashville, and I worked with this comedian, TC Cope, and he said, "Laughter is love." And I said, that really is it, because when you make somebody laugh, you connect. I mean, one of the first things when you see a baby and you can make them laugh, that to me is like, it's just such a wonderful bonding experience, and people remember you.
What do you hope people will get out of My Pancreas Off? What would you hope they walk away with?
I hope they walk away with the knowledge that if a loved one, a friend, a family member is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, they know to contact the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, and that there's help available, not only for the patient, but for their, the loved ones, anybody that is advocating for them. There's a wealth of information, support, especially for the patient. There are survivors that they can, connect with to hear their stories and hear what the survivors have done to survive and to overcome the disease. And I think it's just really, really important. It's not a death sentence, is really what I'm trying to say. That pancreatic cancer is not a death sentence. And also, it's really important that this event is going to raise funds to then keep the momentum of finding a cure for this dreadful disease.
Tell me a little bit more about the mental health advocacy component. I know we brushed on it a bit earlier.
Okay, I first, as I mentioned that I started talking about anxiety and depression in stand up, and it started, diffusing the stigma, like, wow, there's something wrong with me. And that's been very helpful in my recovery. I've also gone through 12-step, but I'm involved with NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And I'm in something called In Your Own Voice. And basically, we go into hospitals, we talk to doctors, family members, maybe students that are studying to be psychologists or therapists. And I share what it was like, what I've done to recover, and what I want to happen in the future. And, I talk about my battles, my struggles, and, what I've had to do to, find recovery. And, the difficulty of finding a therapist and dealing with insurance companies and maybe getting involved in 12-step programs, anything to do to help recover and lessen the stigma, personally, as well as, in the zeitgeist of public opinion. It's just been, it's been a passion of mine. And I think laughter is something that can definitely overcome and help people who are struggling with any kind of mental illness, with any kind of trauma, because once you laugh, it just diffuses the power of, what you think and how you feel, and the fear of what people are going to think of you.
Well, I give kudos to you because you've been pursuing comedy for 30 years and you've been at this.
I know
And
I
it
look
sounds like
so young, don't I?
I know, and I was exactly going to say that. And then, but you do, and also you have a lot of energy and vibrancy, and it seems like you cared about mental health as an issue. When I think 30 years ago, I don't think people were talking about it back then as much as they do now. So you were kind of at the vanguard of getting people and using humor as a way to get people to destigmatize mental health.
And it was tough because my dad was verbally abusive. I was bullied. I was a chubby kid. We moved to a new neighborhood. I was Jewish, and I got picked on for that. But I always felt like there was something wrong because I was having panic attacks. And if I got bullied, I always said going into the rabbit hole where all of a sudden your anxiety would go up and boom. And I don't know, there was just this internal, this knowing, and just being able to make like a bully laugh. And
I never could get the bullies to laugh. How did you do that?
I don't know. Oh, listen, the bitchy tough girls, when I moved to a new neighborhood, it was awful, but I remember complimenting one of them. I go, "Oh my God, I love your blouse." I think I was like ninth grade at this point. And the minute you throw a compliment to a bully, it's all of a sudden, it's like a punchline.
Right. It throws them off. They're not expecting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Oh, well, Oh, you like this? And
Thank
it just
you. Yeah.
changes it. Yeah, it just changes it. The whole the situation, and it diffuses, the toxicity of what's going on.
It's a powerful concept though too. Sometimes we look at bullies, we forget that very often they're in pain too. And extending a little olive branch and a compliment, it can defuse the cycle of anger and hatred and madness that we have at each other. Sometimes it's like, yeah, you were a jerk to me, but I'm going to be nice anyway, and suddenly that can change things.
That's very astute of you, Matt. Very, very astute of you. I was in a documentary, and it was focusing on this beautiful teenage girl. I mean, stunning, blonde, blue eyed, sexy body, the whole thing. And she had dyslexia. And she also had anxiety. And, girl, first of all, I would hate to be a teenage girl coming up now with social media, the Kardashians, and all that stuff. But because she was so pretty, the bitchy young girls like went after her, and it was called "I Love Your Blouse" or "Where Did You Get It?" And that's what they named the documentary. But I said to her, what we were talking about, just compliment them, compliment the bitchy bullies, and it will just flip the situation, and it will save you a lot of pain. And it's funny that's how it works, because everybody's a narcissist when you break it down. You know what I mean?
That's very true. Tell me a little more about your comedy today. Where can people find you? Where are you performing? What's day in the life?
Day in the life, day in the life. Every day I'm like, I'm gonna watch the videos. I'm gonna, because I've been taping myself this entire time, but to sit down and listen and watch myself,
I can never watch myself. It's too
it's
hard.
so
Yeah.
hard. So I'm also writing a book. I want to do a one-person show. I'm in New York. I'm usually at the comic strip on the Upper East Side, the Second and 81st.
Legendary Club. Yep.
Yes, yes. Boy, that took 6 tries, 6 auditions to finally pass there. Anyway, I do a lot of theater shows. I'm with women of a certain age, funny women with a certain age. Carol Montgomery, big props, because she started this show, and it gives women, over 50. What? You're over 50. Anyway, so you can always go to marlaschultz.com is my website, and I have to get better at posting stuff on the website and my calendar, but I'm on the official Marla Schultz on Instagram, and Facebook is Marla Schultz.
Where can people see you next? You're coming up. You're going to be at Laugh My Pancreas Off August 24th. Doors at 6. Show at 7. Trenton Thunder Ballpark.
It just sounds like it's going to be huge. I can't wait to, just be like, hello, hello, hello.
The
So I have a show the 23rd. It's on Long Island in Port Jefferson. And it's part of the Long Island Comedy Festival. But I think it's Mom's Night Out. So that is going to be on Friday, the 23rd, and I will post it.
And then just since we have just a few minutes left, and thanks for all your time today, let's jump a little bit into just the comedy process. We talked a little bit about like mental health and bringing awareness to that. What other subjects do you like to cover? What are your favorite areas to talk about comedically? I'm sure there's a lot.
Well, not obviously, but I stay away from politics. I love kind of pushing the envelope, with the whole wokeism stuff, because I think it's gotten out of hand, especially if I'm dealing with, if I'm performing in front of millennials or the even younger. I find that they take life way too seriously, and they don't have the ability to laugh at themselves. It's human foibles. That's really what gets me. Family, relationships, being married. I do a lot on my dogs, and just like any kind of interactions with strangers. That's what I find funny. But it's like the scope has really shrunk it. I mean, think about it. Would a Don Rickles, how would he do nowadays?
That's a great point. Yeah, and a totally different style too, right? It would be much more rapid fire kind of
insult,
Yeah.
and making
Yeah.
fun of different ethnicities. And, it's such a shame that you can't do that anymore, because there's so many different things about, a Greek, Italian, Asian, white, black. Do you know what I mean? It's
I
like,
think, yeah, I think it's interesting how comedy is definitely undergoing a lot of evolution, right? It's like the style and what people want. And it's weird. Like, you're right. Like some of what we consider iconic comedies, Seinfeld episodes and things like that, you couldn't get away with those episodes today. And so
mm-mm.
it's like striking that balance, right? Like we want to be respectful, but we also want to make sure we still don't lose the ability to laugh at ourselves a little bit. Because done with a good heart, it's not mean. It's not mean spirited.
Correct.
It done with a good heart, it's a way for us all to kind of connect. And be a little vulnerable with each other.
Absolutely.
Okay, so again, Marla, where can people find you? And you're performing all over the place. So where can they find you?
Okay. They can find me on the official Marla Schultz, which is my Instagram, Marla Schultz on Facebook. I do marlaschultz.com is my website. I have to update the calendar. But I do a lot of theaters. I'm doing some shows with funny women of a certain age, so they can go to that site. But I think the best way to find me is really Instagram and Facebook at the moment.
And if you have one thing you hope people take away from Laugh My Pancreas Off, what would that be?
It's not a death sentence. Anybody that's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, it's not a death sentence. If they go to the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, PanCan, there's help, there's support, there's information to help not only the patient, but the family members that are in the fight with their loved ones.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Everybody, check it out. It's going to be Laugh My Pancreas Off on August 24th. Marla Schultz will be there. It's going to be hilarious. It's going to be a lot of fun. This has been That Funny Podcast. Marla, thanks for joining.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it was really great talking to you. And I really appreciate your time.